So then she's screaming out, hey, my window blew out and I'm bleeding. And then right after that, I hear a ping, like somebody walked up and smacked a sledgehammer on the side of the plane. And then right after that, my co-pilot and I see orange tracer rounds going up right in front of the nose. And then everything kind of comes smashing together all at once, and we realize, holy cow, we're getting shot at.
Tower, Delaware Station is release to you, runway 4 left, wind 040 at 5, clear for takeoff.
Seats high, altimeter 0 eyes, we're clear for takeoff, clear for the airspace. Viper check 2. My burn ramp curve was at 354. So yeah, lights on. Next, 16, 15,000, I'll give you some of that. Viper 1 target.
Just like that. Chris, man, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ring.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the joke. I mean, it's always a challenge to coordinate schedules with people flying around the world, etc. But this one takes the cake. So it's a long time coming. We first met flying MC-12s way back when.
True.
And look at you now, flying the mighty Herc. You're a C-130J pilot, but I want you to jump in, just kind of give me the 60 to 90 second elevator pitch of who you are, a little bit of your background, and then we're gonna jump into some of your career here.
Sounds good. Chris Richardson, go by Chewy. Born and raised in western South Dakota, Mount Rushmore area. People have been out playing tourist. Did ROTC at South Dakota State. Got married after that and drugged my new wife to Vance for pilot training.
Nice.
And then got a Enid America. Then got a combo drop out of pilot training because that's what they were doing at that time because they needed so many people to man the MC-12 gig. So I got an MC-12 with a C-130 follow-on to Little Rock. So PCS to Little Rock, and then went and did the MC-12 deployment, which is where you and I crossed paths. Came back, went to the C-130 FTU, spent about 3.5 years at Little Rock flying the Herc. Then went to Laughlin to do what we call a white jet tour as a T1 IP. And then about 2019 or so, came back to Little Rock, got requalified in the Herc. Did another 3-year stint on the AMC side, and then last month I just walked over to the FTU. So helping with the schoolhouse.
Yeah, that's got to be a good gig, teaching people how to fly the mighty Herc, I would imagine. But
yep, it's a lot around the flagpole, but it's good teaching.
Here's a question. This is random, and then we're going to jump into, I want to talk about the Distinguished Flying Cross you received. But a quick question for the C-130. Do you do heavyweight assault landings? Do you train actually in the plane at Little Rock, or is that sim only?
No, we do it in the plane. It's a quarterly or normal bean requirement every year. So I file that away in things we don't tell the taxpayers, but to get our heavyweight assaults on a training line, we'll put on, we call them pet rocks, but they're literally giant concrete blocks that we put on a pallet, and we'll load up 2 or 3 of those and then take on some extra fuel so we can get to the weight requirement to log a heavyweight assault. And then we'll fly around and get whatever practice we need.
All right, and tell me what's the criteria for a heavyweight assault landing? What does it look like as far as weight and then runway length?
Runway length really isn't too much of a factor. It's just based on whatever the conditions, but we usually need to be above 135,000 pounds to count it as a heavyweight assault.
Okay.
And then anything under that is just normal. So on a training line where we don't have cargo, we got to make cargo. So like I said, we'll load up some pet rocks and go fly around.
What's the shortest runway you can land on? If you're landing at 130K, what are you looking at?
I mean, depending on the conditions, if it's lower altitude, we can still, for training-wise, 3,000 feet's our min, but in a deployed environment, it's whatever the toll will allow. So right. If the box says you can do it, you can do it. So
yeah, man, that's 3,000 feet short. And I know you're talking about the conditions, right? Density, altitude, temperature, all those things come into factor. Wet runway, runway condition, if it's probably mud, etc. So that's wild. 3,000 feet for a big old plane is impressive. Dude, I want to jump into the Distinguished Flying Cross story, really dig into that. And then when we're done, we'll talk maybe a little bit more about your career, and we can shed some light on kind of how you got to this point. But I have it pulled up here, and I'll post this as well. But the Singles Flying Cross, that's a big deal. On September 19th, 2020, you're executing a mission out in Afghanistan. You're ingressing into an airfield. You guys get shot at, take effective fire, hits one of your crew members. You attempt to come back around and land. Doesn't work out, and you end up going back, getting another plane. That's like the high-level summary. Am I right?
Yep.
Can you jump into the 19th? What was that mission? What were you doing? What was it frag for?
Yeah, so the frag of the mission was to take us theater response force into Kunduz. So we're one of 2 fixed wing assets to bring a bunch of people in there real fast. The Army is going to do an op, and then we're going to exfil everybody and leave, take them out of there. Was kind of the general game plan of that. So to kind of set the stage, this is fall of 2020, so about 11 months before our exit from Afghanistan, which at the time, if you had told me, hey, 11 months from now, we're not going to be in this country anymore, I would have said, hey, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? I've been here for 20 years, practically having an apartment here.
Right. Some great real estate.
Yep. So anyway, for listeners, like, they've always been a C-130 presence the entire time we were in Afghanistan. There's either one squadron at Bagram or sometimes there's a second squadron at Kandahar. And then for the last few years we were there, it was just a constant rotation of the 4 C-130 AMC squadrons in and out of Bagram to provide that organic airlift support in country and then kind of connect it to the rest of the Persian Gulf. So
with the majority of the sorties is inter-theater airlift or inter-country airlift, so predominantly flying from like Bagram to different forward operating bases.
Yeah, Bagram is definitely the hub of kind of the standard hub and spoke systems. Probably half the lines would bounce around Afghanistan to do whatever was needed. And then probably the other half would go into Kuwait or Al Udeid, bring people in and out of country that needed to. So, like I said, we were on our standard 4-month rotation. So we went out there in May, and we were coming home the end of September. So that's kind of the quirk of this story is this mission was actually the last mission on the last day we were responsible for the ATO. And then our sister squadron was taken over, and then kind of everything falls apart.
Yeah, never let your guard down, right?
No, never rest. So anyway, like I said, so we originally weren't even supposed to be flying. So like I said, there's a height of COVID. So everybody coming into the CENTCOM AOR needs to, at that time, had to go to Al Udeid, quarantine for 2 weeks, and then go after that to your deployment location. So we actually left home station early, did our 2 weeks in the deed, and then went to Bagram, set up shop, swapped out the Dia squadron that was there. So then our sister squadron from Little Rock's coming to relieve us in September. I don't know what the exact story ended up being, but basically there was a little disagreement on when their clock started in the deed for their 14 days. So basically they got more or less delayed a day and a half or 2 days coming in to replace us. We're like, we'll just take the ATO for those 2 more days. My crew got picked to do this mission, so we were kind of excited. Do something different right before we leave, something a little non-standard. And then, so this was like a Saturday night mission. Sunday, the whole squadron was going to out-process. Monday morning, we're taking our jets and going home.
What were you guys having to do a lot of the COVID protocols and all that, separating and wearing masks when you're deployed?
It wasn't too bad, like on base, just operating as a squadron. Obviously, the chow hall was closed, so you're just grabbing food and going.
Really?
That kind of thing. But we did spend quite a few missions with our air medical evacuation counterparts that are always deployed with C-130 unit, like moving COVID patients around Afghanistan.
Okay.
Kind of centralizing them at Bagram.
So on this day, 19 September, you guys are bringing in a bunch of Army dudes into a forward operating base. Is the plan for you guys to stay there while they conduct their operation, or are you taking back off? and going back?
No, we're taking back on. So we're doing an infill, exfill. So we got men and people and equipment that are kind of playing a big part in the mission, since there was only 2 fixed wing assets going in there. So the plan was go in there, drop everybody off, come back to Bagram, wait for the op to be over, and then fly back up to Condu's, do the exfil, and then bring everybody back to Bagram.
What is that timeline supposed to look like?
It's only 100 miles to Condu, so it's a pretty short flight up there. Do an engine running offload, kick everybody off basically as fast as possible so they can do their thing, and then sit back at Bagram for 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever they needed to finish the op, and then go back and pick them up.
Okay. And then where you're going into Condu's, what type of environment is that? FOB relatively established, or where are you guys going into?
It's an established FOB, but it's a little bit on the smaller side as far as the other FOBs in Afghanistan. It's got a decent runway, but kind of borders the town, and then a bunch of open area, and there's a little bit of terrain to deal with there, but definitely not a huge presence, so that's why we're bringing in so many people and equipment for the op, so they could set up whatever they needed to, their security.
Did you guys have any fires that were going to be above you, supporting you, like the ingress, where I assume there had to be some Apaches at least at a minimum that would provide cover?
Yeah, there was a whole stack that was built up for the op, kind of back to the MC-12 days, kind of ISR assets of a whole bunch of different types, gunships, the whole thing.
Going into this, I would have to imagine month 4, you've probably done this a whole bunch. Obviously, you had a lot of time in Afghanistan, the MC-12. Comfort level has got to be pretty high, I imagine. Was there any kind of complacency, you think? Or, complacency is probably not the right term, but it's just putting your pants on to go to work almost. Or is it different for you?
Yeah, we had been into Condu's probably a dozen times just on this deployment alone. So it was like, hey, we're going to the same field we've done to do normal cargo runs both day and night. We're just tweaking the mission a little bit and doing something different this time with, different requirements for the customer.
Interesting. And how many guys were you dropping off, roughly?
We had like a few dozen, and then a couple vehicles and some other equipment.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So walk me through, as you guys are, walk me through from when you airborne and going into there when things start going awry.
Yeah, so we do our rehearsals Friday night, everything goes well. Saturday, take off on time, everything's going great. Like I said, short hop up there. We get up to the Condu's area, check in with the JTAC, confirm our airspace assignment. We get some TCAS traffic that pops up from one of the ISR assets, so we kind of adjust our descent a little bit and our approach, and then we call it a penetration descent, but then we start kind of a max effort, high speed descent to get us down to the approach as quickly as possible and kind of minimize our time in the WES.
What does that look like?
It's basically like, hey, rip it to idle, point the nose at the ground, make sure, all the math works out beforehand. It says we're going to make it, but kind of just get going. So then I probably shouldn't have done it. It was my fault, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, hey, everything's going pretty well. And then that's when everything just kind of fell apart after that. So in the C-130, we fly, for deployment, standard setup is aircraft commander, co-pilot, and then 2 loadmasters as our 4-person min crew deployed. And then we'll home station, we fly with whoever ends up on the schedule. Deployed, we'll do hard crews for scheduling efficiency. So on a 4-month deployment, you'll have 1 crew for 2 months, and then halftime swap it up, do another hard crew for another 2 months. So this crew, we've been flying every other day for 2 months, so you get to know everybody's mannerisms, how they sound on the intercom. You can kind of predict what people are going to say, that kind of thing. And then we'll kind of balance out for risk management purposes, we'll balance out the experience level on the crew. So you'll put the brand new co-pilot with the instructor. You'll put the high time co-pilot with the brand new aircraft commander, and then we'll do the same on the loadmaster side. So Staff Sergeant Jade Morin was my experienced instructor loadmaster, and then Airman Carden was we call him a baby load just for short term, but my inexperienced loadmaster on his first deployment. So anyway, we're kind of at the bottom of our Pen D. We're in a left bank. We're just getting ready to level off to start our approach. And then Sergeant Morin just yells over the intercom, "My window blew out." So I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. We're like completely depressurized. And then she says, "Hey, my window blew out. I'm bleeding everywhere."
Gee.
I'm like, this is escalating quickly, to say the least.
Are you normally depressurized? Like, what altitude did you start this? I'm assuming high teens, low 20s. You're cruising over there.
Yeah, we were up in the 20s, and then we're getting down to probably like less than 2,000 feet.
And then
for the approach.
Are you pressurized up in the high teens, low 20s, or is that something that tactically you depressurize?
No, we'll stay pressurized up there, but we'll depressurize early before we get into the WES. Most people have probably seen a C-130, even if didn't recognize what they're looking at, but towards the back of the aircraft in front of the ramp, we call them the paratroop doors. There's 2 doors that slide up, and that's the primary exit if we're dropping paratroopers via static line. We can drop a stick out of each side of the aircraft at the same time. So that door has about a 2x2 window in the middle of it. And the loadmasters have a really fancy crash-worthy aircrew member seat that kind of folds in front of that window, and they will scan out that window during approach and departure, looking for threats. So that's where Sergeant Morin was sitting on the left side of the aircraft as we were making that turn. And so then she's screaming out, "Hey, my window blew out and I'm bleeding." And then right after that, I hear a ping, like somebody walked up and smacked a sledgehammer on the side of the plane. And then right after that, my co-pilot and I see orange tracer rounds going up right in front of the nose. And then everything kind of comes smashing together all at once, and we realize, holy cow, we're getting shot at. It was probably a little temporal distortion. To me, it felt like it took quite a while, but this whole thing probably was a matter of seconds. So then when we kind of figure out what's going on, evasively maneuver, kind of where our standard procedures away from the threat, get up out of the WES, and then I kind of turn south and point us back towards Bagram. Since our whole world just got blown up, I'm like, we need to start putting the pieces back together. So I'm like, hey, we just got engaged, plane got hit. I know there's an issue with a crew member. I'm just going to point us towards home, and then we'll start figuring it out. So checked in with the JTAC. Hey, tell them, hey, we're peeling off for right now. Call back to the back of the plane to my young loadmaster. I'm like, hey, what's going on back there? Because at this point, Jade's not on intercom anymore, and he's just glued to his window, like scanning for threats. He's like, no, we're clear outside. I'm like, hey, man, yeah, we're good. Turn around. What's happening behind you? Because they sit across from each other. He's like, oh, they're working on Jade. So we had 2 combat controllers in the back of the plane. They were the ones sitting closest to Sergeant Morin. So they were Johnny on the spot. They reached up and yanked her out of her seat, got her behind the armor, started giving her first aid. So I'm like, all right, cool. Carden, I need you to check the rest of the Army dudes, make sure nobody else is injured, and then do a battle damage assessment in the back of the plane. Like, look around, do you see anything wrong? And then get back to me.
Were you guys the first ones? I assume you guys are probably your 2 ship, both flying the same rough flight path, the penetration in there?
Yeah, we were just a single ship.
Okay.
We were going in first, and then MC was coming in later to basically like set up a for all the helos.
Paint a picture for
that
the
were
terrain.
coming.
Is it high terrain, or where do you think you took fire from? To me, like night, I assume, again, you're blacked out. So the fact that these guys hit with effective fire, like right off the get-go, they had to be having some
Yeah, so
night vision
that
goggles.
was kind of the planning element. Is this was like right at dusk, so we're in like kind of the worst time to be flying, but that's what we needed to do to meet the Army's requirements
Okay.
for their timeline of the op. So we're right between the hey, I can't see great, and NVGs aren't effective yet because it's not dark enough.
Yeah, terrible time.
Yeah, if it was 20 minutes, 25 minutes to the right, we would have been completely blacked out. Probably wouldn't be talking to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, let me see where we live.
Yeah, so you peel out of the fight just basically to, all right, hey, we got shot at, we're shot up, like let's reassess. You turn south.
Yeah, so we're heading back to Bagram. My young loadmaster's kind of doing his BDA check in the back of the plane. We're putting all the pieces back together. Thankfully, so one of the ground force commanders, troop commanders in the back of the plane had asked beforehand, hey, is there a way I can listen to and transmit on the command and control C2 SATCOM frequency? We're like, yeah, we can figure that out. So the loadmasters have these really long comm cables that they use. They can walk around the back of the airplane, go outside like during engine start or something like that. So we grab an extra one from another plane beforehand. We rig it up on the flight deck with one of the extra comm panels and then run that cord all the way back so you can plug in and listen to the C2 frequency. So he's sitting in one of the vehicles like right in front of all this. So he literally has a front row seat. So he starts talking on the SATCOM freak, which I'm listening to in the cockpit. So I actually get a pretty good like SA update. So he's like, hey, telling C2, hey, we took fire. One of the loadmasters is injured. She's got a head laceration. So what had happened, the plane ended up only taking 3 rounds. One round went clean through the tail, not a big deal, there's nothing to hit. The second round hit Sergeant Morin's window basically right in front of her face. Thankfully, the outer pane stopped the round, but the overpressure basically caused the inner pane to explode.
Okay.
And then she took all that plexiglass shrapnel to the forehead above her right eye, and then punched about a 2 to 3 inch hole in that window with a bunch of cracking. And then we took the third round, was behind the parachute door up closer to the cockpit. So he's like, hey, so he's updating C2. Hey, she's got a head laceration. And so now we're like, okay. And then at that time, my young loadmaster checks back in. He's like, hey, all the other Army guys are fine. I don't see anything wrong with the plane. So we're kind of putting all these pieces back together. And then I'm like, all right, well, the plane's fine. Jade's got a survivable wound. This isn't like a life, limb, or eyesight type of thing. Everybody else is fine. We're basically still like mission effective. And then I'm kind of like, they're going to ask us to go back. I'm like, I don't really have a reason to say no. Like, I can't really get to no right now after putting all the pieces back together. And then sure enough, right after that, over C2, they're like, hey, are they reattempting the approach? Like, they got to figure out, are they going to go to contingency planning or whatever. So then I'm like, yeah, tell them we're coming back. We'll give it another try. So I talked with my co-pilot, Christian. I was like, hey, this is how we're going to change up the approach. Obviously, we're going to stay away from where we just got shot at. And then told my loadmaster, hey, tell the troop commander, like, hey, this is their 5-minute warning, and we're making a right turn and heading back in. So we did that, started another PEND down to a shorter approach. Same type of thing, everything was going good. Talking up my loadmaster on the way in, like, hey man, this was supposed to happen with 2 of you. Jade's out of the picture. It's all on you. So time to step up.
Be a champion.
Kind of slow as, be a champion, slow as smooth, smooth as fast type of thing. you know, and then I got all the confidence that you can get it done. We get on the approach, start slowing down to configure the airplane, call for flaps 50, which is like our half kind of flat position. Slow down a little bit more, put the gear down, and then at that point, I can tell just something doesn't feel right with the plane. And then I look down at the flap indicator and it's reading 0. And then at this point, I'm pissed because I'm thinking my co-pilot, I apologize to him later, but yelled at him. I thought he wasn't paying, I was blaming him. I was like, I thought he wasn't paying attention. I'm like, hey, flaps 50. And then he comes back and says, they are at 50. So I look down at the lever. So the flap selector's at 50, but the indicator's at up. And the plane's flying like it's in a no flap configuration. So now I know we got flight control malfunction. So then that's kind of my black or white decision point. So we go around, deconfigure. I point us back towards Bagram, check off with the JTAC again, being like, hey, we got more of a malfunction and we're going to have to RTB because we can't land there. No flap landing in the stretch C-130 is a significant emotional event, so that is not an option on the runway up there.
Is that based on the speeds obviously are going to be much faster. Going into a fob, not where you want to be. But, is it a significant emotional event, a no flap landing in a C-130?
Yeah, it's not so much in the standard C-130. Like the H model is pretty short, but the AMC C-130Js or the stretch models are about 15 feet longer. And it does create, it's very pitch sensitive as far as touching down the runway to avoid striking the tail.
Okay.
And then, like you said, a lot faster speeds, a lot more runway required. So we start, we start tracking towards Bagram. I'm like kind of relieved at this point. I got my black and white decision. We're RTBing, going back. And then now I'm like, well, now I got a potentially pressurization problem because if anybody's operated in the Bagram environment, it's basically in a bowl surrounded by 16,000 plus foot mountains. And now I got a plane with at least that window is now compromised and could create a pretty big hole. So we talked about it as a crew, be like, hey, we're gonna head directly back, tell my loadmaster, hey, keep an eye on that window, and then we'll prep for rapid decompression if that window were to fail and kind of work our way back. At this time, medic was working on Jade in the back of the plane, brought her up to the flight deck and finishing bandaging her up. And then, so the other part is the C-130 when we're deployed, you got your maintainers, you got your aircrew flight equipment personnel, you got your intel folks, you got your SARM troops. So most of them, sometime during the deployment, will hop on a mission, kind of get out, away from the base for a little bit, see what they're supporting, that kind of thing. So our SARM NCO, IC, Master Sergeant Davis, hadn't been out on a sortie yet, just for whatever reason, busy. And somebody was like, hey, this is the last mission going out if you want to hop on. So they asked me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with it. It'll be this short hop up to Condu's and back. It'll be something interesting to see. So she was actually just observing, just sitting in the jump seat, which later it was thankful that she was there because she could kind of help out with Sergeant Morin. But at that point, I look back over my shoulder as we're trucking back towards Bagram. She's filling up a puke bag, with all the maneuvering and all the stress. And then Sergeant Morin's getting bandaged up on the bunk behind the jump seat, just bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, well, look at this. I got a puker, a bleeder, and a broke-ass plane. Like, this is quite the day that I picked.
This is a great one to finish up on.
Yeah,
hey, perfect.
This is one way to finish up the deployment.
Do you have any indication that, I'm assuming hydraulically operated flaps? Maybe you'll get to what caused it, but no indications, no cautions, warning lights, anything like that going off?
No, not for that. They're hydraulically operated, electronically controlled. So what had ended up happening later when maintenance kind of took the airplane apart, that third round that hit the plane close to the crew entrance door up behind the cockpit. Because we were in a left bank in the C-130, we got a bunch of wires and mechanicals and everything that runs along the top center line section of the aircraft, kind of maximize space in the cargo compartment. Because we were in a left bank, that round had an angle up into the top section of the aircraft and basically cut a wiring harness going into one of our circuit breaker control units that happened to have the flap controller on
Gotcha.
that specific unit.
Thank God it wasn't your HUD.
Yeah, that would have, man, you get used to the HUD. We love that thing.
It's real nice.
But anyway, yeah, so it gave us kind of a false hydraulic failure on a different pump, which wasn't a big deal because that has a redundancy, but then you're not going to know anything's wrong with the flaps until you go to actually use them. So it kind of simulated that whole unit failing by cutting that wiring harness. So until we went to use them, there was nothing we could do. So we start trucking back towards Bagram. Pressurization's fine. The window's kind of flexing quite a bit, but it's holding. Jade's kind of patched up. And then once we finally get kind of over the top of the mountains, get line of sight with Bagram, then that's when I can check in with ATC, declare an emergency. Hey, tell them we're going to go hold because we need to take care of our mechanical problem. Call ops back at the squadron. They had been monitoring the C2 situation or frequency, so they knew what was going on, but I gave them my short version. Said, hey, we're going to go take care of our stuff, and I'll call you back when we're inbound. So my co-pilot and I run through the checklist. Thankfully, there's a lot of redundancies in using the flaps, so we're able to override the hydraulic valve and manually get the flaps down, and then head back in to Bagram with no issue, clear off the runway, clear up with the fire chief, and then I call my buddy who's sitting ADO at the ops desk. I'm like, hey, what's the plan? Like, you guys have been sitting around at ground speed 0, so
Yeah,
hopefully
the next jet should be ready to go.
Yep. So he called back and he's like, hey, we got another plane, like pre-flighted, ready to go after you get into parking. And so we went and parked, and then that was kind of the cool part, is just seeing an entire squadron when something has to get done, like just jump into action, a literal like beehive of activities. So we parked, shut down, ambulance takes Jay to the hospital. Bunch of loadmasters start transloading all the packs and cargo and vehicles to the other plane. Two buddies of mine have it basically completely pre-flighted, basically ready to crank engines. A couple co-pilots, grab me and my co-pilots, like all our flight gear, take it over to the other plane. I tell my co-pilot, hey, just get the flight plan loaded up. I'm gonna run into tactics, get an intel update on anything they need to tell us before we take back off, and then we'll get out of here. I know you've mentioned General O'Malley, Maestro, before on the podcast. He was actually the wing commander out of Bagram at this time.
Yep.
So credit to him. Yeah, he was a good dude. I got a story about him later, but
Good, yeah. Trying to get him on the podcast, Just, we name drop him all the time, but
we do. Yeah, he was fun to fly with. But anyway, to his credit, like, obviously he knew what was going on, came down to the flight line, and senior leaders sometimes have a issue with injecting themselves, into a situation, but he was just like, well, looks like you got it covered. Like, ran into my squadron commander, was like, hey, take care of your stuff, let me know if you need anything, and he went back to what he was doing. So we appreciated that quite a bit.
yeah, it sounds like him.
Yep. So anyway, nothing really for the intel updates. So everything gets loaded up. We hop on, crank engines, and then basically we had taken on 2 extra loadmasters. So the kind of our senior enlisted loadmaster who was helping the Army plan everything out, he briefed them up on the plan and what was supposed to happen. So they literally walked on the plane and were like, hey, we're ready to go. Another pilot jumped on, just see an extra set of eyes scanning in the cockpit, going back up. for threats and stuff. So, and then Christian, my co-pilot, like we were cranked engines. We're just getting ready to taxi, and I'm like, oh hey, I haven't really checked in with you. Like, are you good? Like, are you ready to go? He's like, yep, let's do this. So we taxi out, take back off, and then the rest of that was pretty vanilla. I just flew up to Condes, did the infill as planned, came back to Bagram, sat around for, I think it was 3 or 4 hours till they were done with the op, and then flew back up, rinse and repeat, pick everybody up for the exfil, and then bring them back.
The cover of darkness helps a little bit.
Yep.
I have a question. Pressurization, again, not come from that world. But for those who don't know, you did mention Bagram like sits in a bowl. My first time taking off out of Bagram in an MC-12 going up to the northeast, I was like, I don't know if we're going to like clear this mountain. Like, do we need to do a 360 to make it up over this mountain? Did you guys have to come in above, or did you come around it? Like, were you on oxygen? These are just super technical in the weeds type questions, but I'm thinking you're not, the cockpit or the plane's no longer pressurized. You got a big hole in it. So did you guys have to wear an oxygen mask? I don't know how any of that works.
So we were ready to go on oxygen. The plane did end up pressurizing just fine. We did a real slow climb up to altitude and didn't go too high. I think we only went up to like 18 or something to get over the mountains, so we didn't stress it too much. But like I said, we were ready to go on oxygen if that window started failing. So then the two options were kind of, hey, do we go on oxygen and hop over the mountain, or do we kind of peel off to the west, go more towards kind of halfway between Mozzie? There's a big valley that leads down into Bagram. So if we had to, we could hop over there and kind of work our way down at altitude. But thankfully, plane pressurized just fine, and we were able to hop over the mountain and get back as quickly as possible.
Man, that's spicy. I'm glad everything worked out and you guys made it happen. So, and obviously for that, you guys received, the whole crew received Distinguished Flying Crosses, correct?
No, just myself. The other crew members got single action air medals for the mission.
Okay.
And then Sergeant Morin got a Purple Heart for injuries, which was, that was pretty impressive. That got handed out like 2 days later.
Wow.
So they're pretty quick on that part. But.
Random. I don't know if this is true. I saw it pop up in the meme space last week with Oppenheimer that all the Purple Hearts that are still being given out today were produced during World War II, in anticipation of going to fight the Japanese, making a landing on the island there. So they produced so many Purple Hearts that they still have in inventory, which I don't know how those things are still like haven't deteriorated, but it's probably not true. I'm just spreading misinformation. Random sidebar. Here's a second sidebar. Maestro O'Malley. I flew him in the back seat of the F-16 during the demo, and he was a champion because he wore a Jahimix. So normally I wouldn't fly with the Jahimix, the helmet-mounted queuing system that has like the big extra bubble bug eye thing on there. But it's about 1.5 pounds of computer that's like basically wearing a baseball hat. Well, I wouldn't do that because of the high G intensive parts of the sortie. Just more strain on your neck. But not a lot of guys at that point had just the 55P, the non-Jahimix helmet. They'd gotten rid of it, and you're just using that for NVGs as well as Jahimix. But he's back there, and we're running straight uphill. It's probably somewhere in the nature of 7 to 8 to 9 Gs, and his neck just snaps forward. He's got that. He was DNIF for like 2 weeks, he said, afterwards. He went to the flight dock right after that, and then duties not including flying. He couldn't fly for 2 weeks. So
it's like, where's the squadron chiropractor?
Yeah, now they got him. But great leader. I hope he keeps going places in the Air Force. He's the one you want to stay around. So
yeah, he was so because he was the wing commander, for like the listeners, when you're in charge of a wing, regulation wise, you're allowed to fly with in any aircraft, like basically under your command. There's a bunch of restrictions and stuff, so there's nothing unsafe about it. But obviously he was like, hey, I have no idea what a C-130 does, and now I'm in charge of have a whole squadron underneath me. So he wanted to go out and get some Herc experience. So my squadron commander jumped on, because he was the certified IP at the time, because that goes along with all the restrictions on one of the missions that I was in charge of. So I'm in the jump seat watching them, and his first C-130 sortie is hopping from Bagram to Jalalabad, which is pretty impressive. That's not an easy field to go into, but he did really well. I'm like, yeah, this guy knows how to fly.
Yeah, I think in the probably a 4-year time span, he went from the F-35, from the F-16 to the F-35, back to the F-16 to the A-10, back to the F-16.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Bouncing all over the place.
Yeah, thankfully everything's the same. Trees get bigger, trees get smaller.
Yeah.
So
it's nature. Well, hey, I want to jump back. What got you involved in flying in the first place? What made you want to go into the Air Force?
I was just always interested in aviation as a kid. You know, a lot of people have that, air show experience type of thing. I definitely had plenty of those. My grandfather was a B-17 mechanic in World War II and then went on to have a pretty long career in the FAA as a maintenance inspector. So he was always talking about airplanes, around airplanes. We were hanging out with him in the summer. He was dragging us to the airport and that kind of stuff. So definitely wanted to fly and keep that kind of in the future. And then, end of high school starts rolling around and you got to kind of think like, what do I actually want to do with my life right now? So I was like, hey, let's go be a pilot. And let's go join the Air Force, and kind of just put everything together at once. So SDSU had a flying program, so went and got my private and my instrument as part of that while I was doing ROTC, and then changed my majors to save some money once it was looking like I was going to get a pilot slot.
Let the Air Force pay for that?
Yeah, let the Air Force pay for the rest of that. And then, just the standard thing after that, so IFS, pilot training, the whole 9 yards.
I know you just have your path, right? But doing the MC-12 bit. So I've talked about it elsewhere on the podcast, but MC-12, that was a stopgap that the Air Force provided really for the Army, the Marines, for ground forces, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. It's about the time like drones were popping up, and it became an insatiable need for more ISR overhead. Afghanistan and Iraq, Air Force, hey, here's your stopgap, pull a King Air off the shelf, pull a bunch of equipment off the shelf, slap it in a plane, and then they just started pulling people from different career fields. But as you mentioned, there's such a need. I mean, it was a mix from every major weapon system, from the F-22, C-17, FAPES, etc. But also, hey, you're going to graduate pilot training, you're going to do the MC-12 for 6 months, and then you're going to go to C-130, C-5, whatever it might be. Do you think that experience helped you later on down the road?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, like, it was an awesome experience. Like, your first lieutenant, fresh out of pilot training, is basically 6 months to the day that I graduated pilot training almost, that I'm downrange flying combat missions, contributing to the effort, where my peers in my class, were maybe halfway through their FTU at that point, and not anywhere towards kind of being mission qualified or anything like that. So as far as getting into the action or something like that, it was definitely a good experience. And then just the interesting part of it is because they needed so many people, like you said, they were pulling bodies from every corner of the Air Force. The squadron up at Bagram, I think, if I think back through everybody I flew with, there was probably somebody from every single airframe in that squadron. So the amount of exposure, the different people we meet, I mean, you got everybody from, like I said, brand new lieutenant out of pilot training all the way up to, some crusty lieutenant colonel that wanted to get some extra flight time, and left his reserve gig or whatever he was doing, to go hop on an MC-12 deployment, and then everybody in between. So just the type of people that you got exposed to, and then kind of seeing all the different missions that you're supporting was definitely pretty cool.
Yeah, for me, and I've talked about it, I wanted to fly the A-10 prior to going to the MC-12 gig. I didn't have a lot of good exposure to a lot of F-16 guys going through pilot training, and didn't fully understand what the F-16 did, nor the community. And fortunately for me, I was exposed to a lot of Viper guys, which made me change my dream sheet, put that number one, and I was lucky enough to get it. And then I think later on down the road too, on F-16 deployment, understanding like what those ISR platforms are capable of, or what they can bring to the fight and amplify it. Because I've had guys chime in like, well, what do pilots think about drone pilots? etc. I was like, I was so much more lethal in the F-16 when there was a drone or an unmanned aerial vehicle on station, just because they're sitting there, as you joked, sitting at 0 knots on the ground, and they're sitting in a booth, right, with lots of eyeballs and high definition cameras that can really amplify the amount of data and what your understanding of the environment is. So it's huge. That definitely played a big role for me, for sure.
Yeah, no, I grew up outside of Ellsworth, so one of the B-1 bases. So we had B-1s flying over town like my entire childhood. So that's what I thought I wanted to fly, because that was the the home state, the at-home aircraft type of thing. But pilot training has a nifty way of maneuvering people into the right airframe that they're supposed to be in. So glad I ended up in the Herc.
Have you been inside
awesome.
a B-1?
Yep.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because the first time I went, I did the Dias Air Show. Buddy showed me around. This was the time when they had it's like an overwing fire, and the crew was going to eject, and the way they did it was, like have the backseaters go first and the front seaters, and there's a student backseater, and he pulled his handle and it didn't go. Yeah. So now what do you do? And they elected to land. Right, but I was like, man, that's a tough spot. But that was the first time I climbed up in that thing, and whoever designed that, I'm assuming it was the Soviets based on the ergonomics. I was like, there's a little tiny window down by like your knee, and knowing those guys are in the stack doing a wheel, I would be so disoriented / probably just throwing up violently in the back, just leaning, trying to like manipulate whatever you're doing back there. Then also like, oh, you got this tiny little window by your right knee or left knee. Not where I want to be in life.
Yeah, no, I mean, that back definitely seems like quite the cave to be in.
I also over-G'd the sim every single time I turn that thing. It's like,
yeah, I was only in the sim once. I'm sure I might have over-G'd it. I don't know, but I was like, this is kind of different. That tail actually diverted into Midland. So while I was at T1IP, that was one of the transition bases. We were there, every other day it seemed like. So we were doing patterns over that B1 for 2 months. And I'm just like, yep, still there, not going anywhere.
Yeah, that would have been a little sporty. I mean, I guess good thing his seat, he was going first and didn't work. Otherwise, he's been sitting there by himself for a little bit of time.
That would have been awkward, definitely.
Yeah. So T1IP after one round in the C-130, then now also in the schoolhouse. Can you talk to me a little bit about what your experience was like as a T1 instructor pilot? And then I know you're just starting in the Herc schoolhouse, but you've been an instructor. Like, kind of philosophy with students, what you're seeing nowadays, what your thoughts are, big picture, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Del Rio is like a hard place to live. It's a little bit on an island, but like everybody says, when they finish that assignment, just the job was awesome. I mean, you know that from your time as a FAPE, like teaching students, seeing that light bulb come on, seeing them go from, walking down the street to be able to fly an airplane is definitely rewarding, to say the least. And then it was just awesome assignment. CT cross country was like the reward for doing that. So you and your buddies, like in a 2-ship, like, hey, here's your private business jet for the weekend. Just be back on Sunday afternoon.
CT cross country, what's that? That didn't exist in my day. So always take a student. What advice?
So like
what
once
advice
a
would
quarter
you
you
give?
do that.
What advice would you give to students going through? Is there any tips or tricks, something that you saw that worked well, or things to avoid?
I mean, just stay focused as much as you can. Kind of take care of every part of your life. Like don't let something fall off. Try your best to keep all the penguins on the iceberg, that kind of thing. But really, it's like just have that commitment that this is what you want to do, and then see it through to the end, because you're definitely going to have emotions pop up in the middle of the training. Like, is this for me? And it's like, no, you wanted to do this, so this is temporary. Just get to the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Before we wrap up here, because I'm going to, again, ask you my standard question. If you found 15 or 16-year-old walking down the street, what advice you would give them? But I'll let you think about that. I feel like I have a pretty decent idea of what's going on, at least the fighter side, based on what my buddies have told me. I'm not there anymore, right? But what is the tempo slowed down at all for like the C-130 world with being out of Afghanistan? the force able to kind of find some equilibrium when it comes to training and building experience inside the crew force, or what's the general vibe today?
I mean, we're still pretty busy. So that tasking that was just Afghanistan has kind of moved to Kuwait to kind of be CENTCOM Airlines, more or less, since it's fairly quiet right now, but there's still, airlift's a constant need because you constantly got people on cargo that need to get from A to B. But really, the focus is on what's next. So agile combat employments, the buzzword that every community's kind of coming up with. Yep, love it. So for us, that's basically, hey, how do we take a small formation, small footprint? How do we be useful to the CAF in different ways? Kind of working through those problem sets. Obviously, you got threats in Eastern Europe, threats in the Pacific. So working through like what those problem sets look like, how we're going to contribute. You got new systems coming online, like Rapid Dragon that just made its like public debut. Basically, so all these new things coming, it's keeping the community pretty busy.
Yeah, interesting. All right, pivoting to 15, 16-year-old you, and I think you're going to hang around for a There I Was story when that's all said and done. But is there any advice you would give him, change anything?
I wouldn't change anything. It's been a heck of a ride so far, so we'll keep going. But advice I'd give 15, 16-year-old would be, stay busy. Always be learning something new, because I'm not that old, but as you get older, like time just keeps moving faster and faster. So don't wait for tomorrow to do something that you want to get after. Like get after it now, because it's only going to keep moving faster.
Dude, it's cliche, I would say, but that is so true. I mean, I say that all the time now, and you really feel it as you get older. It's just, and you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So, Chris, thanks for joining me on the podcast, man. It was very interesting to hear about the 19th of September. And again, when this releases, it's probably going to be on the 3-ish year anniversary, plus or minus a couple days. But that's definitely quite a sporty environment. And so just to hear and where you were in that time and what went down was very interesting. So thanks for sharing that with me, and thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Cheers, brother.
See ya.
15,000 buggies in about it.